Welcome to a March Madness edition of Inside the Hive on the Charlotte Hornets On Side podcast. Joining me as he does every Monday evening, Sam Dracula. Sam, how is your week going?
Week's going well, man. I love the tournament. The tournament's always fun. I don't have a rooting interest. I don't really do brackets. I may throw some money on a game here and there, but largely it's fun just to kick back and watch it all unfold in front of you.
I've exactly one. I don't normally bet on college basketball. I have exactly one bet, and that's for the Florida Gators to win the national championship. So that is what I'm watching for. The UConn game was definitely a little bit closer than I was hoping for. Yeah. But hey, look, that's iron sharpens iron, right? And that's what I'm hoping plays out here. But yeah, I mean, we're going to be talking about tournament today. Our first little talk about draft prospects. We're not going in 2 feet deep. We're just dipping our toe in the little jacuzzi here about talking about some draft prospects and guys to look out for. And we're also going to be talking about the Charlotte Hornets, who, after their fateful loss to Miami Heat, are in fact eliminated from the playoff contention. Sam, it's going to be another year in the lottery. Did you know that? You didn't know
way. That's crazy.
Year. Yeah. You couldn't believe it, right? After watching all the Hornets games this year, you thought they were right in the mix.
Back again, like we never left.
Absolutely. And look, since we last spoke, they did beat the Knicks, which we should touch on, right? 115-98. Yes, they're missing Brunson, but still, that Knicks team had a lot of talent. And I went on the Knicks Film School podcast beforehand, and I was like, well, lightning could strike twice after they beat the Spurs. And I was like, it could happen. And they played the Knicks pretty well earlier in the year when they had basically no one available. And I think they lost by a point, like 98-97 or something of that nature. So I was like, they are more talented now. And they pulled out a really good win. And they've played some not terrible basketball considering late March. But hey, Sam, we have to say, what do we always have to do with March basketball? Take it with a grain of salt. Because remember a few years ago when the team had the number 1 ranked defense for March under Steve Clifford, and everyone was like, "Oh shit! When they come back next year, Steve Clifford's they're gonna be this elite defense. They figured it out, and then all the flaws that were there the year before just remained the year after as well, all over again." So March is a weird time with basketball results, with basketball performances. March is the time when Malachi Flynn scores 50 points. It's where Damian Barr sets career highs, and we just have to be careful.
Yeah, have fun, but have careful fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's start off talking. Look, the Hornets are eliminated from playoff contention. They're now squarely looking downwards rather than upwards, if they haven't already been here for, well, honestly, pretty much since the Brandon Miller injury came through, if not even before then. What are your thoughts on a little bit of closure here?
Well, my mind goes to what happens next, but it's really a long time coming. It's a matter of math that they've been eliminated, but we all know this is where this was heading, and probably where things were destined to head, given the parameters around the first round draft pick this season. So because of the Kai Jones trade from 21, so it's where I think a lot of Hornets fans, if they're realistic, should expected them to arrive at. Probably not exactly where you want it to end up in the bottom, but it's where you want to be. You don't want to be the 11th seed right now in the East. You want to be, if you're gonna be bad, you want to be terrible, and that's where the Hornets carved a nice little niche for themselves in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I mean, look, if they had stayed healthy, okay, let's just play that game for a minute. Let's say average health, right? Because no team's going to stay healthy all the time. But I imagine they would probably be somewhere around where the Miami Heat are right now, 30-41. I don't know, in the high 20s, mid to high 20s, rather than with the 18 wins that they have. And look, honestly, and this is why the flattened lottery odds exist. Their chances of getting a top 4 pick, they'd be less, but we saw what the Hawks did last year, right? Jumped up and got Zachary Rizashea. The way now is it's not just, you have to tank to the bottom of the league. It's just not as big an incentive as it used to be. So that still wouldn't have even been the worst case in the world. And for me, that was like the very narrow path of like, and I wrote this article, I think I mentioned this a few times in the preseason, like Jeff Peterson had to walk this very narrow tightrope of like show progression, excitement, but don't win too many games, but like you want to have momentum coming off your first year in charge with a new coach and not be at the bottom of the league. And they've fallen, off that tightrope. The perfect scenario where they'd maybe be right now is like with 27, 28 wins and with like the 7th, 8th best lottery odds. And I think like everyone would kind of be happy with that. So yes, losing now, they absolutely need to lose now. It's actually quite close, right? The Wizards have 15 wins, probably not going to catch them, but the Pelicans have 19, the Jazz have 16, and the Hornets play the Jazz and the Pelicans this next week. And it's going to be tanktastic. That Pelicans game in particular, I'm expecting everyone's going to be sitting out that night of the back-to-back on the road against New Orleans.
It's going to be quality. Somebody's getting fined. I don't know if it's going to be the Hornets or the Pelicans, but somebody is going to get fined for some bullshit, and I'm here for it. I'm so here for it.
Any other thoughts here?
So what this does, Hornets retain the first round draft pick. What does that mean for the second rounders?
So the Hornets own their own second round pick, I believe,
this year,
and they own New Orleans' second round pick.
Mm-hmm.
So they will have the top 2 picks basically in the second round, or very close to. They probably won't have the very top one, but they'll have like 32 and 33 or something of that nature, which positions them really nicely because you could package those quite easily and move up in the draft. A team, because that first round pick is a more expensive contract essentially for teams, especially those button up against the second apron with the financial restrictions now. So it seems like Boston at 28, maybe even Orlando at 25. They spent last summer. The Clippers at 30. There's all sorts of worlds where they could get up into that first round. A little bit like they did with Nick Smith Jr. a few years ago. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when they went and selected him if they wanted to.
But the Hornets owe somebody some second rounders, though, because of this lottery situation, right? Like the first round pick conveys into 2 2s.
They do, but from
who what year those years?
But
those
I believe they're 2 2s from next year and the year after.
Okay, cool. And did they go to Sacramento? Because that it's been traded so many times, I don't even know who gets those second rounders now.
Yes, it was involved in De'Aaron Fox trade. It was with San Antonio, and San Antonio traded it to the Kings as part of the De'Aaron Fox trade. Before that, it was with the Hawks, and
the Knicks had it for a little bit.
Who had it?
I thought. Well, was it part of the DeJounte Murray deal?
It might have been. Before that, it was with the Knicks. It went from the Knicks to the Hawks, to the Hawks to the Pelicans, the Pelicans to the Spurs. It's gone around.
It's been passed around a lot, yeah.
It has, because every team requires it to say, we got a first round pick in return for.
Yeah.
And it's a good they're all like the semi fans are like, sweet, we got a first without even trying to think about the detail.
Right. Oh, so the good news is the Hornets have been stocking up on second rounders. So it's going to be a push, essentially. And even like with the Hornets, probably still up, right? I feel like even with all the deals they've done the last like year and a half,
they're way up.
They should be in the positive as far as draft picks go. So, they keep their first round pick. They have to surrender 2, but they have plenty left in the bank. So they're in a solid position still, going forward to do something with all those second rounders if they want to, whenever they decide to. Yeah. But there are some guys in this class that probably aren't first rounders because of their age, like 5th or 6th year guys that could be some good value down in the second round. So I think there's a lot of potential there for them to get busy in the second round. The Mark Tatum special.
Yeah, and look, we talked about moving up. I also think there's a world where they move back, right? Because that 33, 34 range, they are almost always fully guaranteed contracts. They're not two-way players that early in the second round. And if you're Charlotte, do you really want to be adding, 3 rookies next year to this roster? I don't think you do. Not on like fully guaranteed contracts. So what they could also do is, let's say, combine them to move up that I mentioned about earlier. That's 2 rookies. Or you can select one of them, or you can trade to go move down. So that if you want to like draft some two-way caliber players, so right, you got KJ Simpson on 2-way. I expect he's going to be on a 2-way again next year. I don't think he's shown, categorically enough that he's going to be converted to a standard contract. I think that's very unlikely. You've then got Damian Barr and Wendell Moore Jr. And I think there's arguments you could probably get down to a pretty high 2-way slot, somewhere around 40 in this year's draft, quite easily. Pick up another future second, and you can draft someone to kind of add to that 2-way factory rather than having like Barr or Wendell Moore. It's a little bit like, which of those 2 actually would you rather keep if you were to only keep one?
Oh, Ball for sure.
Yeah.
Between Ball and Moore? Yeah, Ball.
Yeah.
For sure.
I agree. I think he's looked a better player. Wendell Moore probably has like higher pedigree as a prospect if you look at his journey as a draft prospect, but I'm just not sold on quite a few things with Wendell. The shooting, the offense, the processing speed. I think Damian Barr gives you more, but like having Barr and KJ Simpson also seems a little bit like redundant because it's 2 point guards on 2-way contracts. Does that make sense?
No.
So I could see a world where it's just like KJ Simpson and they like move on from both Barr and Wendell Moore. But yeah, I also think there's a world where they I think they'll come out of this year's draft with at least one 2-way developmental guy. And I would imagine they do that by trading one of those picks and moving down, or trading like back into the draft later on using other future seconds.
Yeah, I think it's all in play. I would love for them to have another big as one of the 2-way guys. It just makes sense to have a guard, a wing, and a center. Just kind of spread your luck across the 2-way contracts.
Yeah. And the other option again is overseas players.
Yeah,
it's quite an interesting overseas draft this year. You got guys like Johan Beringer, overseas player, Dink Pate, Markovic from overseas, Zakarski, Rizic. There's a bunch of overseas guys, even Alex Tui from Australia. There's a bunch of overseas guys who could be like James Nagy replacements in terms of, hey, let's have some draft rights. If the player develops, we might bring them over. If not, it's at least something that we can like put in a trade so that we can comply with the NBA rules of, hey, we have to touch something. We all have to be trading around. Like there's other worlds with that as well with the second round. It's a pretty deep international class, actually.
Yeah, this is a fun draft. I haven't done my international homework yet, but
no. Well, there's no point to yet because in my world, the season's still going on. And when I like to evaluate prospects, I like to try and wait until I have a full body of work, because you can get something in your mind being like, oh man, they're like this. And then they play 8 more games. Imagine T-John Salon last year. Imagine if you'd stopped in March and you watched T-John Salon film and you went, oh, that's me done on T-John Salon. And then you saw the playoff run that he had, the progress that he made late in the year. Like, that's what moved him from being like a guy in the late teens to the 20s to being a top 10 pick. So that's why for the international guys, I think you're right to wait.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm like, there's so many possibilities. And again, this is like another opportunity to really see what Jeff Peterson's made out of, like what his like plan and what his style of team building is, because 1 year isn't enough to get a proper picture of it, given all the circumstances around it. So we'll see what he's up to, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think there's a lot of there's a chance where this is the highlight of 2025 for Charlotte Hornets fans, is this draft cycle.
I think we already know quite a lot about Jeff Peterson and Charles's vision. In fact, let's play a game right now.
Okay, let's do it.
Of stick or twist, and I'm going to give you a characteristic, and you're going to tell me that if it's going to stick, as in that you think it's something that the Hornets will value, or twist, you think it's something like I don't know. All right, ready?
Let's do it.
Elite work ethic.
Stick.
Okay. Physicality.
Stick.
Floor spacing.
Well, they don't seem to value it that much right now. So I'm going to say twist and say that they're going to value that in the future. If that makes sense. I don't think this team spaces the floor very well.
They don't, but I think the players they've added, well, Intijon Salon was like, that was absolutely one. I know he hasn't this year, but like that is the vision, right?
Okay.
If he wasn't a shooter, in my opinion, like they weren't drafting him. He's super young, but they see the vision there. Like we've all seen the deep threes to form, some of the shot versatility.
Yeah.
Rebounding.
Oh, stick for sure.
Yeah. What else have I got here? Two-way play.
Yeah, big stick.
So, like, there's certain guys, if you just, like, read into some of that, and I know some of those are a bit cliche, like, every player will say they're a two-way player, but it's just not the case. Yeah. But I think if you read into, like, the Tijon Salon thing basically told you, oh, here's another characteristic I should have said, like, a guy who improves a lot in a short space of time, like a quick growth trajectory.
Okay.
That would be another one I'd stick. Like with Tijon Salon, that's one of the things they talked about after drafting him. Like, look how good he improved so quickly. So we know that's something they value.
Yeah.
We know that they're willing to be patient and they're willing to kind of draft on tools and approach over like skill set. Like, I think those are some of the things that we know already. And I think you can look at this draft through that lens and start to get a feeling of which kind of guys feel like Hornets guys. I'll tell you right away, Ace Bailey, don't think he ticks a bunch of those boxes.
Yeah. Well, to your point, there's a guy I think ticks all those boxes.
Give me the name. I think I know what you're going to say.
And it's not Cooper Flag, although he does, by the way. But that's no fun to talk about. Edgecombe.
BHK Edgecombe.
That dude. Do you want to pivot to that? Because
yeah.
All right, because I have, again, this is my way too early evaluation on VJ Edgecombe. I turned on his tournament games. I forget who they had first round. Mississippi State?
I believe so. And then they played Duke and they're
I turned this on expecting, okay, this kid was a 5-star kid, a highly touted kid, a high draft pick, and I expected him I expected everything to go through him. And this young man is so like differential and like willing to get involved, get his in the flow of the game, that is so unselfish, and he's so good at it that I was like, okay, if the Hornets end up in a position not to draft Cooper Flag, Edgecombe seems like a perfect third piece to the Miller and LaMelo situation, where those guys are taking the shots and Edgecombe is finding his as the primary point of attack defender, right? Creating opportunities that way. And then on the other end, as a slasher and spot up shooter, like I think that kid could fit in perfectly to what they have right now. And it got me excited. And I want Cooper Flag, don't get me wrong. But like if the instance where it's like, who do you pick that's not Cooper Flag? Edgecombe is high up on the list for me right now. And again, it's way too early, but he jumped off as a screen as from everything I just talked about. Like this, he looks like he gets it right now as a young prospect.
Look, I think Edgecombe is the name you're going to hear about the Hornets, depending where they form the lottery, a lot.
Yep.
Because it's a clear position of need. There's a clear fit with LaMelo when you just see his athleticism and his ability to score in transition and the type of passes and lobs that LaMelo can throw. And then you talk about the need for this team to have perimeter defense, and that's also something that Edgecombe, from, you know, if you read in scouts, like his steal and block numbers and his deflections, like can be a real positive. So it's a really neat fit, like two-way player who fits a position of need, He's not a big creator, but that's kind of helped because he's next to LaMelo Ball and like to a lesser extent, much lesser extent, Brandon Miller. I get it. I get it on paper. It's an easy sell. If I was doing mock drafts and I didn't cover the Charlotte Hornets all the time, I'd think the same thing. And on top of what you said, like apparently like super high character individual. I've heard Sam Vecino was listening on the podcast the other day. Extremely well thought of at Baylor. And we talked about how important we think that is. I do have some concerns. I'll be really honest. And I've watched both his tournament games so far. I've watched a couple of games in the year. I'm not any point like ready to start putting out rankings of where people are going to be yet. Anything like that on my end. I've got 22 names on my list right now that I've watched in depth. And he's one of them. But 22 is not enough for me to talk about rankings. He's small. And he looks small out there. Okay, he looks small in college.
Yeah.
And at the NBA level, he's going to look even smaller. And it's not just height, it's also strength. He's an incredible athlete with a runway, don't get me wrong. But he's also someone like he gets swallowed up when he doesn't have like a full lane. And that for me shows up on both ends. Finishing at the rim, he's like really struggling with layups this year. If it's not a dunk, he's struggling to finish at the rim. And then defensively, like he's just not that switch versatile because of his size, and he picks up fouls. And I know the reputation is for him to be like an excellent defender, this like disruptive elite perimeter guy who can also score in the other end. I'll be honest, like maybe I've just not seen the games yet, and that's why I need to see more. I've not been that impressed by the defense. It's just kind of looked like meh. For me, I know there are moments I could go find clips that aren't meh. I'm not talking about like the highlight clips. I'm talking about the six, 7 things a year that he does incredible. I'm talking about like every possession defensively. How does he impact the game? I don't feel him out there. I don't feel him out there in the Duke game once defensively. I think I made that in my draft notes that I'm doing. And then the last thing I'll talk about is the shooting, which I'm really not sold on. I'm doing some. I did this last year, where I watched like all prospects 3-pointers. I'm about halfway through Vijka Edgecombe's right now. We're already done Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey's. And I'll share for the listeners. I'm only halfway through. Right, I've not done this here, but so far, Vijka Edgecombe is shooting 43% on open catch and shoots. Pretty good. Okay, 43%. We'll take that. He's then shooting 25% on contested catch and shoots, 28% on contested dribble threes, which he's only attempted 7 of in the 78 attempts that I've logged already. And then he has not hit a single step back 3 all year. So like basically if he's wide open, he's a good shooter, and anything else, he's below average. Like probably shouldn't be shooting the shot. It's not a good look for your offense. And if you're undersized and you're not a great shooter and you're not great finishing at the rim, I don't think it's a complete package. And I'm here, I guess, early to try and pre-warn Hornets fans. I have personal reservations about him being like the perfect, I don't know, 4th pick if they were to end up in that scenario, or 3rd pick.
So that's where my mind goes with this kind of conversation, like who would be the best pick with a 2nd overall pick. Like Cooper's, you have your choice of everybody, and Flag's not there. At this stage, is there a guy that jumps out at you as the best option at 2?
Yes, at this stage there is. I think the clearest no miss gonna be an excellent NBA point guard for years to come is Dylan Harper. I like, will he be, I don't know, will he be De'Aaron Fox? Will he be Jalen Brunson? Like the level of impact between those two players is pretty like big. Like Brunson just led the Knicks in the playoffs last year as like the number 1 option, versus De'Aaron Fox has been like a number 2 option on a playoff-ish team in the Kings. Number 1 option at times. I don't know where he'll fit on that, but like you know you're probably going to get someone in the NBA who I think is going to average like 18, 5, and 5, at least. And I think that's a really safe floor.
And I think that's super valid. Like, he has the size, like, by far. Like, that's a major check plus with him. And
how he uses that size with his footwork and if you watch his footwork on his drives, like, and he doesn't play like Jalen Brunson in a lot of other ways, but specifically like his ability to like pivot, like in space, get to angles, create space, spin away from defenses. Like, it is Brunson-esque, but he's 6'6" and big and strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like, regardless of fit, Harper makes a lot of sense, the most sense, and I agree with you. But like, that is gonna be interesting. Yeah, because like,
it's the Scoot thing all over again, right? But we've moved on. Like, I think the Hornets fan base, they were probably a lot stronger on defending LaMelo Ball at the time of the Scoot draft than I think they are now. We're 2 years past that point now, right? And I don't think there'll be any Hornets fan out there saying that they couldn't draft Dylan Harper because of LaMelo Ball. I don't think there'll be a single person. Reasonable.
Yeah, reasonable. Exactly. That's actually a Hornets fan too. Like, not. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yes. And okay. All right, that's it. That's I'm gonna bite my tongue on that one. But I like Dylan Harper. I like that he's ballsy enough to wear Nike at an Adidas school. I like that from him. He had that NIL, put it to good use. I respect it. And I'm curious to see how he like properly measures out. Like, similarly with Edgecombe, like, I wonder if, because Harper is one of these guys that out of this size, this young, they have the opportunity to still grow a little bit. And when the combine rolls around and he comes in, if he could come in at 6'7" or something like that, or Edgecombe could go the other way where they're over exaggerating his thing a little bit. I'm curious to see how that plays out as the process continues. But I like Harper, and I'm all here for a conversation about what the Hornets should do between Harper and Ball, if it goes that way come lottery night.
Look, I'm guessing you'll watch a lot of Duke for Cooper Flag.
Mm-hmm.
Let's park Cooper Flag for a little bit, but where are you at with their other guys, Conkanipple, Malawak?
So Malawak is a guy that I saw someone comped him to Mark Williams, and I thought that was, I was like, that was a little bit
lazy,
crazy to me.
Yeah,
like,
he's 7 foot and he went to Duke. Let's just do Mark Williams.
Malawak looks like he's 20 pounds heavier than Mark Williams. Like, he looks like a grown man right now, and he's properly filled out. So looking at it through Hornets eyes, my eye goes to him over Knipple, just because of that need for like a proper young, big, and I think he he checks that box in spades.
Yeah, like, he'd be a really clear. You know exactly what you're getting with Malawak. Okay, I guess the only question is, like, is he going to be able to shoot it from deep? Which he made one against Baylor the other day, didn't he? And he had a reputation for shooting it back at the NBA Academy in Africa. I think it could be a potential option. I think he'll be able to probably get picked somewhere in the top 10. I don't see him getting out of there. It might depend a little bit on order.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to have Conkanipple ahead of Malawak, though. Again, I don't know what ranking's going to figure out yet, but I love watching Conkanipple play basketball. I think, look, he is not a good athlete, and he doesn't look like there's not many NBA small forwards who look like Conkanipple who've been starter level basketball players. Okay? Like, slow, unathletic, white guys. But he is so smart. He can handle the ball. He has great shooting projections. I remember this vividly. Before the college season even started, Jonathan Gavoni was saying that the buzz out of Duke's training camp was that Conkanipple was the best player there, not Cooper Flag. Like, Cooper Flag was good, but Conkanipple was the guy, like, the veterans on the team were going like, which one's Cooper Flag? which one's the top right guy in the country. And I think he's been excellent. With Cooper Flag out, he was excellent. With him there, I think he's showed versatility. I think he draws fouls incredibly well using his smarts and IQ. I'm gonna be high on Con. I don't know how high yet, but I know I'm gonna be on the high end. He's someone who probably the guy that I love watching the tape of most outside of Cooper Flag this year.
Okay, I like it. Again, checks that floor spacing box like I'm like a motherfucker. Like he got that on him, and that is sorely needed. When was the last time Charlotte had a knockdown 3-point shooter?
Well, they should they got Brandon Miller on the Melo Ball.
I'll ask the question again.
I
know what you mean, and I feel
Troy Daniels is the answer.
Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Troy Daniels is the answer. No, look. Brandon Miller is a knockdown shooter. I believe in that.
Mm-hmm.
LaMelo Ball is a knockdown shooter if he's open. And if he's not open, then he's not a good shooter. And that's where we're at with it. But it's weird. Like, this team should be a better shooting team than they are. If you look at the talent they're missing, like Trey Mann, Brandon Miller, Grant Williams, those are 3 of the top 6 floor spaces on the team, and they're all out.
Yeah. And like, all due respect to Seth, he doesn't have the volume that you like from that skill set to be part of the conversation.
I'll say this, everyone always looks at 3-point percentages on the team and go, God, these guys can't shoot. Sometimes it's not actually about them being bad shooters. It's about what looks are being generated for them, right? Just talked about VJ Edgecombe shooting 43% on open catch and shoots, basically sub 28% on everything else. So if he's in an offense where he's, I don't know, let's say he went to the Lakers and played off LeBron James and Luka Doncic. Mm-hmm. I reckon you'd look at VJ Edgecombe's shooting figures next year and you'd go, God damn it. VJ Edgecombe's shooting 39% from 3. This guy's a great shooter. He's parked in the corner shooting open corner threes. The Hornets don't have guys who draw doubles. They don't have a good flowing offense that generates a bunch of shots. And that's what I really think is dragging down the 3-point percentage for a large majority of these guys. I think all of them are probably slightly better shooters than they are, but it's the quality of attempts, which makes it so much more difficult, and they're not shooting a good percentage on them. So I don't think it's as simple as just add better shooters, because you can add better shooters and their percentages will just drop in this current version of the Hornets.
Yeah. Yeah, true. It's true. A lot of a quality player is going to have a hard time finding his spots with a bunch of two-way guys running around and guys who aren't probably long for the NBA anymore. It's gonna be hard to get yours in this environment. You're not wrong, but when you have LaMelo and Bridges and Williams out there, and you can't find a guy to hit open threes, it's what? How? That should be the easiest thing to get, and a consistent contributor with that group hasn't been part of the plans this season. And it's sorely needed. Josh Green, shoot the ball, dog, please.
But Josh Green might be the perfect example. He's actually shooting a good percentage of 3. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is now, but earlier in the season, it was really high. But again, it's complete smoke and mirrors. Other teams are leaving him wide open and they're wanting him to shoot threes. They're not closing out hard on him. It's the only thing that he does. He stands there and shoots them when he's wide open. So it's just misleading to be oh, Josh Green's one of the team's better shooters. I know that's not what you're saying, but mm-hmm. But I do agree, right? Adding floor spacing to this team in general going forward is a need, but so is adding rim scoring and getting free throws. Because I tell you, if you just go and start adding loads of shooters to this team, the issues this team have of scoring in the paint, which both LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller, it's massive issues. And this team is the worst at getting to the free throw line in the whole league. Well, jump shooters don't get to the free throw line unless you're Trae Young sometimes.
Yeah. You're scumbanging away to the line. Yeah.
James Harden, right? But normally they don't. So you have to sometimes try and find these guys who are going to generate points in different ways to give you some checks and balances. Because if you have a guy slashing to the rim, that's going to create better looks for the people. So I'm not going into any draft or offseason being like, I don't know, we have to just value shooting above all else. I just feel like, again, there's a world where LaMelo Ball isn't on this team in 12 months. So, like, that's not factoring too much into my psyche here of like, remember last year, everyone's like, we can't draft Jonathan Clingan, Mark Williams, right?
That wasn't me. I never said that.
I know, but that's what a bunch of people said.
Yeah.
6 months later, they tried to trade Mark Williams. Like, you feel so stupid years down the line. We're like, did we really not do that because, you know, this guy was here at this one point? And like, well, what were we protecting? The 18-win Hornets team?
Yep.
Dude, I just think everything has to be on the table at this point.
I couldn't agree more. Like, the Hornets aren't drafting for need is a luxury. If you're a team that has an off year where you are a top 5 team and a couple of key guys get hurt and you have an off year, right? And you end up at the top of the lottery, you can draft for need at that point. You have the freedom and luxury to do so. But the Hornets are in no position to do that. They need to draft the best player available, and regardless of position. And then if it hurts feelings, it hurts feelings. But the Hornets owe it to themselves to create that the roster flexibility for themselves to go with a guy on a rookie deal over a guy that's being paid if they play with the same position. Like it, I don't get that feeling from this group that they are a draft for need group.
No,
I think they're
absolutely not.
I don't think they're there. And I'm grateful.
They just drafted Tijon Salon last year when they had Miles Bridges and Grant Williams on the roster. Like, they drafted basically your third depth power forward. So if that's not telling you that they're a team not drafting for need, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Well, they're also drafted like a team that's trying to tank too. So like, I don't know. I think depending on how the lottery goes, if they take Dylan Harper, that's like a real like, yo, we are a serious front office and we're trying to do the best thing for the franchise and we want to take the best player available. And I'd respect the hell out of that if they went that route.
I would. And like, we have to also be careful because we're like, there's a danger here of talking outside both sides of our mouth, right? Because we look back on the Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson thing, and it's like Scoot Henderson and LaMelo Ball, knowing what we do now, really wouldn't have fit together that well as like everyone thought pre-draft. Okay, like Scoot really struggled to shoot the ball. He's been massively turnover prone and he struggled to finish at the rim. Mm-hmm. Those are all LaMelo Ball's weaknesses as well. And he's not been the game changer on defense that I think some people thought Scoot was going to be either in the NBA. And like fit does matter, I think, when you have to like have players who are in the same tier. Or again, at the time, it was a lot clearer, like LaMelo Ball was a lot younger and probably like we felt had a high level of potential, could be the leading guy on a great team at the time. And I think now there are more question marks around that. So like if you have Nikola Jokic, I understand like drafting for need because you have to like make up for certain deficiencies and you want to play off your best. But for me, just the Hornets don't have anything other than like getting to the free throw line and playing with some physicality offensively. That is something that even if they do move on from the LaMelo Ball, that will be an issue with Mark Williams. It'll be an issue with Miles Bridges. He's not someone who gets the free throw line a lot. It'll be an issue with Brandon Miller.
Yeah. There's a lot of holes to be filled. And I haven't, maybe it's a podcast for another day of just going down like a tier list of needs for the roster, or like roster needs or roster characteristics that have to be addressed in the summer. But yeah, for the record, I was Team Scoot. I was firmly planted in Team Scoot. I'll be perfectly honest. I was never anti Brandon Miller, but I wanted Scoot because the LaMelo injuries, and he had it was pre-LaMelo extension, and that little floating possibility of that extension not being signed and having that insurance in case things went left with the organization and LaMelo having that guard, you can stagger their minutes and play them relatively at the same time was the thought process for me. If everything worked out and everything, if everyone stayed healthy and everyone was still on the roster, if things didn't go well and you wanted to move one of them, you could always move one of them later, whether it was Scoot or LaMelo. That was my point of view at the time. I'm happy. I got a Brandon Miller painting behind me. Like I'm so happy he's part of the roster. But I was Team Scoot, just for the record.
So I was, for maybe new listeners, I was Team Brandon Miller 90% of the way through. And then when the reports came out around the ongoing concerns about potential future litigation of Brandon Miller for the gun charge, which was still floating out there at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you combine that to the outlook that the Hornets had at the time with Miles Bridges, there was even reports about Montrezl Harrell at the time, James Bouknight. It just felt, can the Hornets take this risk at this time? And I said, and I'll said this every time, is the film tells me that Brandon Miller was the better prospect than Scoot Henderson in the same tier, pretty close, really close actually. I had them, but I'd Brandon, but the off-court stuff, which I don't have any first-hand insights, I'm having to go off what I've researched and was out there, and the current situation the Hornets are in. Safe was just like the safer. Scoot was the safer pair of hands, and I flopped to that very late on in the draft cycle, but maintained that Brandon Miller I thought actually had like the better film. If you took all the off-court stuff away, I would have said it was Brandon Miller. Now the truth is, we all should have been Team Amen Thompson. It appears because he's now just like freaking rocket launch past Brandon Miller's ceiling and impact in the world of like NBA analysts, media, and if you want to ever watch those like player rankings, I'm telling you, Amen Thompson will be ahead of Brandon Miller in most of them ahead of next season.
Yeah, Brandon has some ground to make up, and it's very much like, what have you done for me lately? Him missing this whole season is going to get.
And also because when he was playing this season, it wasn't brilliant. It's not like he was killing it and he just got injured. He was kind of like having one good game, one bad game, and then got injured. And it kind of felt like his season never really got started.
Yeah, I think that's super valid. But again, that kind of goes back to like the Bridges conversation. It's like those three dudes have never really got it clicking at the same time. And when you're like, even put Mark Williams in there too, where it's like, that's the four you're going into the next season with, like another potential of an unproven mix. Like it doesn't make sense to me to continue with that group as is. But yeah, Miller, rough go, and has a lot of ground to make up from that draft class.
Let's go back to March Madness draft prospects for a minute. Did you get to watch much Trey Johnson from Texas before they went out?
A little bit, and I didn't love what I saw, to be honest with you.
What didn't you like?
I thought he was targeted, and I wasn't impressed by the scoring.
He's a jump shot reliant player. And he can make some incredible shots, don't get me wrong, right? But every shot that he makes, you feel like it's a difficult shot. And that's what worries me, because he's like, I think he's like 190 pounds, 6'6". So he's like super thin. Like, is not a guy who's going to get to the rim a lot. It's going to be all jump shots. And he's going to make a ton of them in his like NBA career, don't get me wrong, because he's a truly gifted shooter. And that is, like we just talking about, a major need for this team and many other teams. But I do worry it's a little bit one-dimensional. I think the passing has got better over the course of the year. That was a real concern early on. He was like a black hole. I don't think it's that. I think he's like a perfectly fine, functional passer. But again, he's someone I need to watch more on. I only watched, I think, 3 games of Trey Johnson so far. So this is super, super early for me.
Yeah, I mean, for me, he just looked like a guy out there, to be honest. Like, it was a Xavier game, and I know he had left it with 23 points. Like, cool, but I don't know. I didn't see top 5 pick when I watched him. Mm-hmm. But that's all. That's it. That's all I've seen from him. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on that, because when I start watching the stuff, I may come back on here with a different tune, because I know people really like him, like a lot, and I personally just didn't see it.
And maybe the last one that's touched on here, Derek Queen, who obviously hit the game winner last night for Maryland. Power forward, center, has had a pretty incredible year. I believe his coach went on the record earlier this year and said that if he was white and European, he'd be in conversations for the #1 pick, which was a great quote, if nothing else. Like, you're definitely going to get the rounds on the media if you say that. A super gifted, like 6'10", incredible vision passer. You'll never ever speed him up. Super smooth, like awkward player, and I mean that in a nice way. Like even the game when you saw the other night, like driving left, hit a like one-handed floating jump shot leaner off the glass, like while going to the left. It was an incredible shot. People have seen it by now. I don't care if it's travel or not. I'm just not interested in that conversation. The big question, I think, is defensively is like, who does he guard? Like, because offensively, there is a lot to work with, but defensively, there's a lot of questions too.
That's fair. That's fair. Another guy I'm curious to see what his actual height is. But I don't know. Like, is he the consensus best big right now?
Malawak is probably ahead of him, but yeah, he's next. He's next on the list.
Because he is. I mean, Maryland, if they go on a run, he has a chance to jump up there, I guess. But man, it's an awkward fit for me. With his size, I don't know what to make of it. I don't know what to make of it yet, because the shooting's not like, it's not like when you're that 6'9", 6'10", and you're not much of a shooter. I get concerned unless you're like really elite on the block. Yeah,
and some people make the link to Alperen Şengün, right?
Fair, yeah.
Who was a great rebounder in Turkey. I think he won MVP of the Turkish league. Was a really good skilled scorer, showed passing flashes, but he also, I think, like led the Turkish league in blocks. He was blocking a ton of shots, and I think it was more disruptive than Derek Queen has been defensively. I mean, I was big on Alperen Şengün, and I've not like Derek Queen is one of the guys I've watched least so far, so I'm not even going to say like if I like him or not. I don't know enough yet, but I liked Alperen Şengün a lot. And I know that is a comment that's been made, and I'm interested to kind of keep that in mind, while also a little wary of that influencing me too much while I watch his film, because Şengün has been like incredible, right? His NBA career, but equally he does take some things away from your team depending what you're wanting to do, and like you've got to know if you're drafting Derek Queen in the top 8, the top 10. Are you going to put him in a position to succeed? Because you need to play a certain way for Derek Queen to succeed.
Yeah, it's a real commitment. Like, it's almost like playing with Julius Randle. It's like you have to we're gonna do this. We gotta do this.
Yeah.
Like, we gotta go all in on this.
Any of the last March Madness thoughts you want to get out here?
Yeah. So this is not a first rounder. I'd be shocked if he went first round, but he's a guy that I would love in Charlotte. From just a blink test point of view, Kobe Brea from Kentucky, and just flat out, we talked about shooting a lot on this podcast. This is just you're signing a contract for a guy to shoot, and that's it.
That really is Troy Daniels 2.0.
But yeah, I like me some Kobe Brea. Again, Kentucky is still alive in the tournament. It's just something to monitor. He had a really good game against Illinois. Unlike the Illinois point guard, I didn't love what I saw from him in that game. But again, it's early, But with Brea, I was like, yeah, like as a potential two-way guy, second round pick, I like the look of him so far.
Yeah. I think he might even go undrafted potentially. He's a guy like a good run here. If he has more games like the Illinois game, like against big time competition, I think he will actually earn himself into getting drafted this year. So I think
he's
he
a
is
fifth-year
actually
guy.
striker.
He's a much
Yeah.
older player. And if he was 19, I think people would be losing their minds a little bit around him. But he's back-to-back seasons. He shot damn near 50% last year in the Atlantic 10, and then 44% in the SEC after he transferred into Kentucky. Like he passes the eye test and the stat test. He's just an older dude, so the draft value will be much later, or like you mentioned, as an undrafted guy. But as a two-way potential dude, come draft time, I'm here for it right now.
So my favorite under the radar, later round guy at the moment, UNC's RJ Lewis. No, I'm not really. Look, he was a fun college player, but let's not go there in the NBA. Alex Condon for
oh my god,
the Florida
no
Gators.
lie, I had him on my list, but I didn't want to bring him up because he kind of shat the bed against UConn. I like him. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, Australian guy, Ted Zorn broadcast. His dad is a Hall of Fame Aussie Rules football player, which I love that. His mom, I think, was an Olympic swimmer as well. And I actually had someone in my comments today reach out by Twitter and saying, an Australian Hornets fan saying he taught Alex Condon at school in Australia. Damn. And that he was like a outstanding kid and was cheering for him. And I was like, that is so cool that Alex Condon's teacher is, following me online and reaching out. And hearing that he's like outstanding individual, again, that person didn't have to say that, right? That makes me even more interested. And I always think like these Aussie guys who pick up the game later, he's a sophomore, but he's an older sophomore, but there's always like an element of untapped potential there because they're just like learning the game at such level. But just like a power forward center who is really active and plays super hard and is pretty versatile, I think, and can move around pretty well and has flashed 3-point range. I don't know if it's going to be there. He didn't take any in that UConn game. Maybe moment might have been a little bit too big for him, but I think there is something there in the future. So he's a guy who I'm interested in. Like you're probably only going to be a backup front court player, but if he can be like an Isaiah Stewart type, where he's like come in, play the 4 or the 5, mix it up defensively, give you hustle, like that's if you can play both positions truly. And power forward is more of a question mark right now. I think I need to watch some more, but that's going to be worth pick 20 in this year's draft. I think if he can definitely be that.
Yeah, he was the way he was setting and setting screens and slipping to the rim. I was like, oh, I just had like thinking like, oh man, Melo could find him so easily, man. Like he's such a big target and he moves so clean to the bucket after. I'm with you. I like that from you. I like that pick.
Alex Condon, official second round draft candidate of the Inside the Hive Hornets Outside podcast.
Let's go.
You're welcome. Right, Sam, that's everything for this week. Light episode this week. Next week, we are talking about, look, we're halfway through the decade, 2025. We're going to be talking about the biggest sliding doors moments from the last 5 years of Hornets basketball. So it should be a fun show next week. We're going to be reliving some of the key things that have or haven't happened over the last half a decade, and I'm looking forward to get prepped for that one, Sam.
Same, me too. I don't know if it's gonna be fun or sad or both, but it's gonna be entertaining. I can guarantee it.
Yeah. All right. I will speak to you next week.